There's a forgotten field navigation hack from the Second World War that honestly almost no one talks about today. Yet it once helped stranded scouts, resistance couriers and patrol units find their bearings when standard compasses were lost, frozen or, well, smashed. For the first minute, it's worth grounding ourselves in the reality of wartime conditions. Gear broke constantly. Compasses cracked in winter, needles demagnetized under radio equipment, and soldiers on the move didn't always have time to wait for replacements. In occupied territories, resistance fighters couldn't carry military compasses at all. They were incriminating and dangerous. So men and women across multiple fronts learned a simple but astonishingly effective trick. They created a compass using nothing but 2 metal scraps and a cup of still water. No glass housing, no dial, no needle assembly. Just raw physics adapted for survival. And what's striking is that this technique still works today and remains one of the most reliable backup navigation methods for anybody practicing bushcraft or off-grid travel. The reason this improvised compass method worked so well is that the soldiers understood one of the oldest principles of magnetism. Any piece of ferrous metal, like a sewing needle, a razor fragment or a shard of wire, can become magnetized if stroked in a single direction repeatedly with another metal that already holds magnetic charge. Even 2 random metal scraps can do this because friction aligns the magnetic domains inside the metal. Wartime fighters used pocket knives, the edge of a bayonet, or even the clasp from a field pack to magnetize a sliver of metal. They didn't need strong magnetism. They just needed enough alignment to influence movement. Once magnetized, that sliver was placed gently on the surface of water using a floating platform made from a leaf, a piece of oil paper, or a shaving of cork. The result was a functional compass that aligned itself with Earth's magnetic field. This method wasn't glamorous, but it gave fighters a dependable north-south reference when their lives depended on correct direction. Accounts from the Polish resistance provide one of the clearest examples of how vital this trick became during covert movement. Couriers transporting messages across forest trails simply could not afford to carry equipment that identified them as resistance members. Yet they still had to track precise directions at night or during fog, especially when avoiding roads patrolled by enemy units. Resistance manuals taught them to break a sewing needle into 2 pieces. One half served as the stroke metal, the other as the magnetized needle. They used wool clothing to reduce friction, stroked the needle fragment from eye to point about 50 times in the same direction, floated it on a scrap of birch bark, and waited for the slow turn toward north. This was done countless times, even on long marches through swamp and forest. It didn't look like a tool of war, but it functioned like one. The physics of why the technique remains so reliable is important to understand. When one metal scrap is stroked along another repeatedly in a single direction, tiny magnetic particles inside the metal shift and lock into alignment. This creates a temporary magnet. Even weakly magnetized metal responds to Earth's magnetic field as long as the floating platform reduces friction. Water is ideal because it provides nearly zero resistance, allowing even a faint magnetic force to orient the fragment. The bigger challenge wasn't the magnetism. It was, well, keeping the floating platform stable. Soldiers often dip leaves in grease or wax to make them water repellent, Others shave slivers from cork stoppers on ration bottles. What really mattered was that the metal stayed afloat and free to rotate. If humidity or wind interfered, they shielded the setup with their hands or even dug a shallow indentation in the ground to create a windbreak before placing the water container inside. The modern bushcraft application of this World War II method is honestly incredibly straightforward. If you're outdoors and lose your compass, the first step is to find 2 pieces of ferrous metal. A sewing needle is ideal, but a small nail, a fishhook, or even a thin blade from a multi-purpose tool works just fine. Take one metal scrap and stroke the needle in a single direction, never back and forth, 30 to 50 times. This magnetizes it. Next, create a floating base. A thin leaf works in summer, while bark or foam works year-round. Place the metal on the base and gently lower it into still water. A lake's edge, a cup, a hollowed-out rock, or even a plastic bottle cap will do. Within seconds to a minute, the metal will slowly turn until it aligns north-south. Once you establish the axis, all you need is the sun's position or your prior map knowledge to determine which end points north. A more advanced step used by some soldiers was marking the north-pointing end for future use. Once they found the direction, they sharpened or notched the north side of the fragment so they didn't have to repeat the full process every time. They carried the pre-magnetized scrap in a cloth pouch to prevent it from being demagnetized by impacts. Modern survivalists can do the same by wrapping the magnetized fragment in paper or fabric and storing it inside a wallet or pack. If the magnetism fades, the stroking process restores it quickly. Another useful wartime variation involved using 2 metal scraps at once to increase accuracy. Some scouts placed 2 magnetized needles on the floating platform in parallel. If both pointed in the same direction, they had confidence in the reading. If they diverged, they knew wind or current was influencing the movement. This simple redundancy made the improvised compass surprisingly trustworthy, even compared to early military compasses that could freeze or stick under moisture. The real value of this lost bushcraft compass today is that it gives outdoor enthusiasts and wilderness travellers a dependable zero-tech backup tool. When phones die and compasses break, this method continues to work anywhere on Earth. It requires no calibration and no special materials. It is a direct inheritance from wartime ingenuity, born from necessity and refined through countless field improvisations. For serious history buffs, it is also a powerful reminder of the kind of knowledge that disappears quietly over time unless we deliberately preserve it. If this guide brought you value and you want more deep dives into forgotten survival methods and wartime ingenuity, make sure you subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this video so others can learn and keep these skills alive.